Hello everyone, my name is Frank Wiedemann. I'm part of the project Âme. I'm part of the project Howling. I'm part of the project Schwarzmann. I'm part of a live performance collective called Circle of Life. I do other collaborations and I'm on my own basically. And as on my own, I'm responsible for the Âme live shows and also other live shows that I do. And ADE asked me to explain a little bit what I'm doing here and how I do it. And so I give you a more or less quick overview of what's going on with all of this. And maybe to introduce it a little bit, explaining you how I got into this. So I was a DJ as well, producing for many years, and in I think 2009 we made a tour. There was Kristian, the other half of Âme, Henrik Schwartz and Dixon, and we all toured together as a circle of, not a circle of life, as a critical mass. And we played, I don't know, 10 or 12 live shows, basically a best of our tracks that we produced. And with this, I had the first contact in playing live electronically. I played in bands before, but this kind of setting I started with at this time, and I was really hooked. Before that, I already watched Henrik playing a lot, and I was really inspired by this. So I figured out that I might be a better live player than a DJ, and so I set up a little setup. I put together a little setup for the tracks that we made, and tried to replicate the tracks that we produced in the studio very much one-to-one on the stage, which was not so clever, but at the beginning you have to learn. So my first setup was basically this, the APC, which is traveling with me for many, many years now. Different ones, and the computer, and that's it. And I had many tracks, and I tried to replicate all the different layers that our productions have, and all the breaks and the little things, and it just drove me mad, and I was totally stressed all the time. So after playing a couple of shows, I talked with Kristian and to get some feedback of him, and he said, like, yeah, that I look stressed basically, and it's all too full and things. So my next step was to find more of the essence of certain songs and strip them down, because also in a live atmosphere, when you play it in a club, all the little details that you hear under your headphones or on a super nice sound system, you just don't hear. And it's also not necessary for the energy that you bring on stage and into the people. So I stripped the tracks really down, and also found logical bits that make sense together. Like certain parts, like an intro, second intro, main part and stuff. And that gave me way more freedom to actually rearrange the songs live all the time. Make things longer, play with the intro, maybe don't play any melody, or don't play a different bass line or whatever. So that was the first good step. And I played this kind of my setup for many years, 2 or 3, many, since I got a bit more, since I got secure actually in what I'm doing. So it was really learning, practicing, playing, practicing, failing and so on. And then I figured out that it would be nice to have a little addition to play with, to add things. So when Roland came up with the TR-8, the older one, I started with this to add little beats, hi-hats, whatever you could use to make a track more exciting, and to also have the transitions between 2 songs more fluid and maybe more magic, hopefully. So I started integrating this, and then I enjoyed it so much, so I started to integrate a synthesizer as well. I think it was whatever, a little Volca or whatever, just to add sounds and be able to play some notes. And until now, this setup grew until this all happened. So I added another synth, I added more controllers, I added a sequencer, another effect units. I integrated the Model 1 mixer into my setup, which is now really important for me because it gives me so many powerful tools to tweak the sound while I'm playing that not so many other mixers do have. Plus it sounds amazing, if you ask me. I built, or have somebody build me my personal mini modular system, because traveling with the modular system, how I travel, wasn't really a clever idea, because all the modules were starting to bend and stuff, because I just didn't have the space to secure it. So everything broke very quickly and so on. And then also I figured out I need basically a couple of combinations, because I'm not playing a modular set. So I use drum modules here. So this all happened. And now finally, I think I'm able to be super flexible in playing my or our productions. Totally improvise and build something from scratch, or add on and put things together. I'm able to play alone. I'm able to connect with other people and play via Ableton Link, or even just with Henrik. We played the Schwarzmann sets for years. We played without any link, without any sync. We just synced by the tempo, which was fun because sometimes the one changes and then you don't know what's happening, but somehow it's amazing. So I can strictly recommend trying this out for at least once. But I have to say, Ableton Link is very convenient, and especially when you play with a couple of people, like we do with Circle of Life. It's like 3 or 4 people on stage at the same time. It helps, obviously, to not think about this, at least. So yeah, I'm totally free in collaborating, playing alone, playing even an ambient show, or which I haven't done yet, but it will come, I'm pretty sure, or playing something that is just what I usually don't do, like a techno set or something. So I walk you quickly through what I'm having here. Centerpiece is obviously the computer. I'm now probably in the 5th computer that I'm playing live with, because somehow these things tend to get dirty in clubs and suck in all the really bad air. So after 2 years, and also by plugging in and out, USB in and out, it's just breaking. So every second year I need a new one, to be honest, when you play a lot. So, but you still can work with them at home, but not they're not reliable anymore in the club. That's my experience so far. This one though, I have to say, the new USB-C, on a side note, I'm quite happy with. Anyway, so in here I run Ableton Live. I have, as you can see on the screen, I have like the left half is basically the songs, and the right half is free slots to improvise and record on. Quickly, the first track is always as a MIDI drum track I use, where I have my own kick drums, hi-hats and stuff. All the MIDI drums I program. Then I have usually 2 tracks with beat loops, or additional beat loops, or something that just adds up to the atmosphere. Then I have a vocal or a lead sound track that I can play with. I have a bass line, which also sometimes bass is often played via MIDI, but on that later. I have 2 additional synth whatever tracks that I can play with. So basically 2 to 7 is audio, 1 is MIDI, and the last 8 is also MIDI, where I have synths to tweak. And therefore I can basically tweak the drum track, I can tweak the synths, and I have a filter on each of the channels. Plus, I can tweak the arrangement. That's what I can do for like many years now, even before all this. And everything is kind of built around the APC, I have to say. I had the earlier version before, which means all the songs happen in this 5x8 scheme. So when I change the song, I just press this button and I'm on a different song. I have just quickly the controllers that I use here is obviously the volumes for the first 8 tracks. I don't like to switch pages, I have to say, so I have a next controller for the other half, basically. So, because it kind of drives me nuts when I play. And I have the volumes. I have the master fader. I don't use as a master fader because it's quite dangerous in a club environment. So I would always recommend to program something else on this. In my case, I have a high cut, a low cut for the kick drum. So when I play the kick drum, I can just go here and cut it off and bring it back quite easy for drama. And the Q level I use for hi-hat decay as well. So I can have a super short hi-hat or super open. These 8 controls I use for that one synth that is on track 8. I kind of try to have it always in the same way. Here's a filter, here's a resonance. The third one is for like envelope, if it's making a tack away or giving a longer decay or whatever. The fourth one is always kind of adding something like a noise or a sub-octave or whatever. And the other 3 are for effects. Can be drama or whatever, you know, doing something that makes it sound rich or whatever. And the top row, I have a master effect rack basically that I built myself, which you can see down here. It has a high pass, it has a low pass. It's a bit weird that they are here, but that comes from the other APC, which had like 2 of these kinds up top, so that explains it maybe. I got used to it. I have that's a Valhalla pitch shifting kind of unit or frequency shifter, which I control the amount and the frequency, so it gives me kind of a weird transition effect that I can use. I have 2 delays and a very long reverb that still gets some signal. And that's it basically. So whenever I play, I can quickly do effects on the master section to make a break or do some drama or whatever and then go back. Other than that, I don't really use these buttons so much yet. The tempo and the nudge button are useful, obviously, when you play together and you're not synced. Or I also use I really like to play more and more again with the tempo. I did this in earlier times and getting back to it so that, let's say, because the energy is super high on a festival outside or such, you have to start maybe fast because it just feels right. But then after a while, you're like, I can go slower and come back and stuff. So that I use it more and more. And the last one I use is the crossfader. I have basically I have everything that runs in the computer. I can constantly loop, which means because the slots, obviously, when let's say I have a track playing, 5 of the slots are already playing, I can't really play something that's in the same slot from the next track. So sometimes I just do, when I think the end of the song is arrived, I just loop it for 8 bars, and then I can put this in the middle, I stop the rest, let the loop only play, and then I can filter this and stuff, so I can build something new into what was running. I hope it's understandable, but I'll show you later. Last but not least, these 2 controllers also work with the computer, obviously. These are for the filter banks or these 10 knobs are responsible for filters for, as you can see here, maybe it's like on the 7th track I have a low and a high pass filter with resonance. basically, so I can, while I'm playing, I can tweak this. And then on the 6, I just have low pass and fifth 2 and all the other ones. Then I have these 2 filters are for my loop that I recorded, so I can do low and high pass. And then I have 2 synths here, basically a piano that I control here, and a kind of SH-101 Juno type of sound, bass, lead sound that I use for different things. This pad, this APC Mini, I use to record clips while I'm playing. So I have always, like, this is maybe a bad example, but it's not switched, sorry. That's what I have to do. So I always have empty slots. I know this is piano, bass, SA1, and so on. And whenever I play something, I can play a recorded loop here. The future is that I also use these here, but I haven't figured it out yet, because it's a bit tricky to have both running. More on that maybe later for myself. So that's the computer. Other than that, Model 1 is the second centerpiece, obviously, where everything gets together, all the synths and drum machines that I use. And it is also a very creative tool because you have a low pass and a high pass filter on each track. I have a cut and boost filter, like EQ, where I can cut and boost certain frequencies. I have 2 sends that I use. They go into the effect pedals, later on that. And I have a master low pass, high pass. And I have something that I like quite much. You have 2 headphone outs, right? So I can use the second one by selecting which tracks I want to record. Let's say, because it often happens, you do a sound check and you have an amazing loop running, whatever, because I'm so amazing. Was joking. You have something running that you really like, and to not forget the idea, I can just record this, and I say, okay, I need to record the 808, the TR8 and the modular, and then maybe each single, so I have the single tracks and so on. And also, this is good when you play, when I play live with other people. Sometimes I have another keyboard with me or something else that maybe has no MIDI, and that's on that track, so I can easily loop that one. So this is actually a good tool to add loops from the outside world or from what you're just playing, and to keep it for later. So sometimes in sound checks I made like really long recordings on this one, for instance, and put them in the live set for later, and having a nice background loop or whatever. Quickly said, here's my computer. I only have 2 tracks out, and it's humming. No, it's not humming, it's buzzing, hissing. The computer is connected with a RME Babyface to the desk. The RME for me is just a really good sounding, really stable interface that has a lot of possibilities. For instance, I have 4 outputs and 4 inputs that I can use also when I play with other people. Plus, I can add a ADAT interface, and I have a little 8 in-out converter that I can travel with. That adds 8 output and inputs if I ever need that. Let's say I play with with a band and want to have the bass separately out, or the click or whatever, then it's just really handy to have more outputs. Back to the mixer. This is the TR8. This is the modular stuff, more on that soon. And these 2 are the 2 synths. I have a Roland boutique synths. It's a SE02, which is basically a mini Moog with some extra features. Sounds really good because it's all analog. It's not like the other Roland stuff. And it's made by the Studio Electronic guys who made the really great SA1. That was the first rack-mounted mini Moog, basically, in the time. Love it. And the second one is a Roland GX03, which is the modern equivalent of the GX3-Pit, which was the first synth I ever had with my father at home. So I'm quite familiar with this, and I like it because it's a very basic polyphonic synth, easy to work with, but you can still do some crazy things with cross modulation and stuff. So I really like it. It's hands-on. And Roland, if you're listening, maybe you should always do the knobs, not the faders. The faders are really too small, at least for my fingers when I play live. So I've always preferred the Roland boutiques with the knobs, but they're amazing. Thanks. So, and to complete maybe name dropping, this is a Fader Fox controller, which is quite sturdy, and it has all I need, basically a lot of knobs. As a keyboard to play all the synths, I use the Arturia Keystep, which I like because the keyboard is quite okay for that size, and it has this really nice sequencer, which I have sometimes trouble syncing. More on that later, maybe. But apart from that, I really like it as a nice little keyboard that's quick and you know, doesn't need so much space. And very important, it has the ability to add a sustain pedal, which is laying here, and which I marked very lightly because in a club, dark club, you just don't see it on the floor. This is the TR8, Roland TR8S. I use it mainly with the internal sounds, but slowly starting to integrate my own samples, using the new FM drum synths, which I think is really nice. And for me, this is just the perfect tour drum machine, mainly because of this, because you can be super quick in switching things off. It's super hands-on. There's not so many hidden functions, at least. You have so many knobs to tweak, which I prefer. I don't want to look in menus or don't want to push shift and da-da-da. Just hands-on. And everybody, I think, at least I grew up with a TR programming. So I rarely use samples yet, but starting to work with it. I like the new FM synth that they included with the new software version. So I'm slowly getting into it, but the internal sounds are really great, I think. Plus, this is for me the ultimate hands-on live drum machine, because there's so many knobs. You have the faders for the volume, which is amazing because you have this running, you can quickly just do this and you have to break, right? It has the classical Roland TR programming, plus a lot of extras with like, you can play live to it and program live, and with dynamic and feel and da-da-da. It has, the effects are totally okay, you know, delay, and I have a overdrive here in the master effect section. It's so simple, perfect. Thanks, Roland. Over here, as I said already, that's the Babyface, the audio interface I use. I have these two effect pedals. It's a Mary's Mercury. It's a really nice reverb, and the Teile-Delay from Berlin, from the Keine Music guys. Super nice delay, very simple. I think a little bit like the Boss delay. And I use these two on the Sense of the Model 1, which gives me a lot of flexibility just to add reverb, very short, very long, delay very quickly, tap in the tempo. It's super nice. It's just very handy. This one, the Mary's Polymoon, I use for this setup, and now this is a bit of a subsystem because I use this Korg Volca mix, which sometimes makes me really happy that it has a speaker inside, because then you can just quickly check the sound. Even if the sound system is not running, you can check things. It's cool. And I have basically the 3 channels used for 1, 2 drum modules, and 3 is the Zero Coast, which is a synth that I first had connected, or still can connect, to the SQ1. That's a very quick sequencer for this, basically, at the moment. But I can always connect it to this one when I feel so. And I like it because it's so unpredictable and weird. And I don't totally understand everything yet, which I like because that makes me experiment with it. And it's just a nice add-on to do crazy sounds. And the polymoon actually that is added here on the send is the same. It's basically a delay on steroids with modulation and multiplication and shimmer and da-da-da. You will see later. And with this thing, you can create very easy soundscapes that can just hold a track or do some atmosphere that I think is amazing. And because I don't have enough, that's the only minus point on the Model 1. It has no mono inputs. It has only stereo inputs. So I had to make them stereo anyway. Plus it wasn't enough. So I thought I add this one because it has a stereo out and I can plug in some mono signals. Like I said, this sequencer controls these modules. Quickly explained, this is basically a drum module made after the Pearl Syncussion, one voice. It's quite powerful, very flexible, has different sound modules. I will show you later. This one is a FM drum module, which I, to be honest, basically use as a hi-hat because I think it has a very mean sounding hi-hat, especially in combination with this filter that is built after the Polyvox filter, I think. It's just really rough and they are internally connected already, so I don't have to plug cables here, as well as the outputs are connected here and everything goes straight into the mixer. So it's all, the only thing I have to plug in is these four. And this module I don't use at the moment because I don't use CV on this, but it's basically an octave switcher for whatever. One of these two octave switchers. So at the side, I don't know if you can see this on the video, but there's like different options to change which the green cables are the CV outputs of the sequencer. So at the moment I control with the CV for this, I control the decay of the hi-hat or of the noise. And with the other one, I control the filter, which is called width here. But I can change this when I feel like. I think that maybe I should notice this little box, which I'm very happy about. It took a while to do it. My super talented technician Philip, he built me this little. He builds me little things like this one, for instance. Obviously, it's wonderful, and he built me this power supply. So I have, because with all these things, you usually have like so many different types of power supplies, and then one breaks and it's always problematic. Then of course you can buy these, I don't know, Seox or whatever power plants they call for the guitar pedal boards. But the problem is they have usually only 9 volts or 18 volts, and then not so many ampere. But some of this stuff, like for instance a USB hub, they need like, I don't know, 3 ampere and 5 volts and stuff like this. Ampere is it, not ampere. Anyway, so I have all this in here, all the volts and amperes I need, and that's quite handy because I have only this one plug to plug in at the end, and that's it. As we're speaking about traveling, everything, as you can see, is mounted on these two wooden plates. I try to have everything connected as easy as possible. So I have these 2 looms coming out here. One is for the sends and returns, and one is for the output of the mixer and the input to the audio card. Other than that, I have a couple of like MIDI things, not too much going on, USB. But I bring these cables to the mixing, to the synths and to the drum machines. I bring myself because sometimes I don't get this. I ask this to be on my rider, but sometimes I don't have it, so I have to deal with another mixer. And then I have a lot of, because this is all RCA, obviously. So I have to bring a lot of RCA to jack adapters, which I always travel with. And so I'm easy to play on a Mackie as well. It just doesn't have all these nice possibilities, but it works. And the second case, so these two go in cases. In a big one, you don't see it, but it's like a big Peli case. So it's safe whenever I fly with them. if I ever fly again. And these two, they go in a smaller suitcase that I technically can take as a cabin hand luggage with me, which saves my ass a couple of times, because when the big boy doesn't arrive, I can still play with these and the computer. So I have a set of emergency cables with me, basically, that can connect this and the computer to whatever mixing desk, and USB cable. So that's the basic setup I can always play with, and still be able to flex to play some ads. I also have usually I have in my hand luggage a Teenage Engineering OP1, which I think is an amazing little piece of creativity. And when I have these two with me, I can do many things. And sometimes, actually, it's a bit challenging not having all this, but sometimes it's actually nice to have that challenge to create something live on the fly without knowing what's happening. Last but not least, you have to always watch the weight of the stuff, because you have to fly with it, or I have to fly with it. So it's all very much calculated, but it has to be stable. So you have to have, I mean, you can probably see it on some places. It's just these things get dirty, they get thrown around, they fly. It's just a mess. So you have to be aware that things break. This is probably the 5th one I'm using, and it's not that they're built badly, but just stuff is just being flying around, and it's dusty everywhere. The clubs, it's the mixture of dust, humidity, the fluid from the fog machine and stuff. So it's just everywhere you have this dirt. If I once opened this thing up to see what the fan looks like, and it was just, if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen the pictures. Now that I've explained you how everything is set up, I will actually trying to explain you how I'm using this. So there's basically two basic types of tracks that I'm using, or that I built. One is, like I said, the old type where I have, like, let's say 8 bars of that loop, 8 bars of that loop, and da. But I figured out that this is a bit, you still have to do a lot and not enough time to add and be creative. So I'm now trying something new since a year or so, where I have 2 or 3 different intro loops, 8 bars or 16 bars. And from that, for each, like for bass, for drum loops and stuff. So it's kind of growing. And then I have one really long bit where a lot of things just happen automatically, which gives me then the freedom to do other things. Basically also think about what's the next song. What's, you have a little moment of relaxation. It's quite important on stage, I figured out. Plus, there's one thing that so far only DJ could do, in my opinion. It's these little breaks before or after a break. Let's say quickly you play something's running, it's amazing, you just want to have the drums off quickly, like for 1 bar or something. Here I would have to stop all the bars, put down the faders, and then immediately bring them back. And it's not possible to do it for me. So with having these long bits, let's say 2 minutes of a track, which also then contains all like the vocals, but it's still in single tracks, just so I can still change volume and stuff and leave one out. But I have at least the security that something is running, and it's gonna be exciting because there's like these little tiny breaks inside that I just can't replicate. But I still can play something without the vocals, or just the vocals, or just the drums, or whatever. I have ready songs, like songs that we produce that are done. But I also have a lot of sketches in here that I've been doing in the studio, little ideas, first version of songs and stuff. So I always quickly throw them in my live set and try to play with. So because then you learn the song very much, and also you see if it's going to work or not. And if you, after like, sometimes it happens, you play it the first time and it's like, wow, it's amazing. And then the second time it's like, oh, it's okay. And the third one, you're like, oh, it's actually not really important. So it falls out again and you don't work on it furthermore, which is helpful in my opinion. Also, you learn a lot about how to arrange a song when you play it live, because you feel the energy that the people give back to you while playing it, and then you see, oh, I need to come up with that break now, or I have to drop these chords now because they just have to come here. And I have to say, in earlier days when I didn't have all these additional things, I was always recording my sets in Ableton, which is actually amazing because it records not audio, it records all the movements you do basically. So you can record the whole arrangement of the track you're playing and then edit it afterwards, because every controller movement, like when you started one clip, whatever, it will all be recorded. And that gives you, it's an amazing start to have an arrangement done very quickly, if you ask me. So this track I'm showing you now, I'm presenting to you is a track I did with my friend Roland. We had 2 nice days in the studio a couple of years ago, and one track is already out, and the second one will hopefully come soon. So I have these elements here. One, let's start with the basic one. It's the bass, right? It's recorded here with some analog drum modules. Let's add a kick drum. You see I have the filter here. Shaker. Now I feel like I should have a little bit of a hi-hat, which is not coming. Okay, so far so good. I have a bongo loop here. And now you see the thing I have here, different variations, like this one, then a bit more bongo, clap, or I'll clap solo. So I can play with this. And already I'm like having an easy way of adding things or removing things and playing around. Quickly showing you the master effects. So I have the high pass, low pass, which I also have here, obviously, in many ways, but it's always good to have many filter possibilities. Then I have a long reverb, so I can do these kind of breaks. Very handy. I have a very short delay and a very long one. Don't ask me why the tempo is here and not next to it. It grew. Whenever you put a delay on the master, don't forget to put a low cut on that as well, otherwise it's getting too messy. And last but not least, but this phase shifter. You can imagine doing weird things with it. Let's add some arpeggio, whatever this is. So this is just audio loops, right? You can see it. This one is a bit longer because it has kind of a delay effect at the end. You can see that here. But yeah, it's just, sometimes I have these 32 bar things so that something's happening, but like I said, sometimes I have really long ones which I go with the next song. You see that. Some drums, some more drums, and then finally I can go and drop the, in this case, main instrument. Which is also too loud sometimes, and I like that because oh, we're everything too loud. That's kind of how I work. Also in the Buchla you see there's like things going on like these chords. So I can now break things down again to play with it. And I also have the bass line that this tom does. I have this as a separate MIDI file, so I can now you see the synth working. So I have, in this case it's not a filter, it's a gain. I can add some trebles, so it's basically a little bit of a distortion going on here. This one doesn't do anything. You can actually, if you notice, these are, so I have the master rack in Ableton here, where all the synths are in. It's a lot, it's like 60 or so. And then I have a color code that shows me this is this one it goes here. So sometimes I also see, okay, there's only these three, and the delay is used. So now I could do kind of this thing. So now I want to add something here. Let's say I go with the JX3. A quick side note, which is quite handy. I noted, I wrote down all the keys for all the tracks. Nowadays you can have this even on a CDJ, I heard from Kristian. But in earlier times it wasn't possible, so for me it's very important to know which key I'm playing in. So in this case it's B, I think not B flat, I'm never sure with this B thing. In German it's called H, that's why. So it's B, so I know instantly which notes I can play. That was not good. Let's do another one. So I always have to quantize this a little bit because latency, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a good player as well, so now I can add some. Add some delay or add some reverb, and then I can And already you have kind of a nice atmosphere to play around. So I show you my secret hi-hat, which is this little thing. And I'm already quite happy with what's going here. That was that thing. And now I can show you also quickly that thing, which now it's like I do it without the reverb. Now it's just a delay, right? Feedback, time. Then you can multiply this. So it's going stereo, and then add dimension, whatever that means, kind of the shimmer thing, and dynamics, and immediately you have kind of this sound going on, which is made out of this. So that would be a typical scenario of how to build a track from scratch without too many elements. Now I show you in addition. Now that I know, for instance, you can see this here. These things are color coded as well. These are my songs, and they like. Green, this kind of green is always E minor for me, so I know this is all E minor. Now we are in B, so I can play technically everything that is B is in this kind of color, light blue. So I can go and play this thing. Bass change, everything else is running. And add some atmosphere and chords. That still could run without doing too much, and I have the transition already going on, which is quite handy. Sometimes I do a transition without taking care of the key, but then I reduce everything that has a key, like a bass or chords or whatever, so I just have beats running, which then helps me. And now you can see these 5 clips here. Those are the long ones, right? You can see it's like a long beat thing, it's a long atmosphere, it's a long vocal thing. And whenever I decide I'm ready to move to the full song, I just do this. And now we are in the song, it's running. I can now totally concentrate on having a drink, finally, or playing. Playing stuff around it. And there's Rise singing nicely. I can now also do things like this, right? You see here my atmosphere going on here, which is nice. Turn into your eyes. Crawl into my side. This, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, gave me the opportunity to get off that old bass line that's still running here. One way of a transition. So basically, this is how I work. What I really like about playing live, just as a last advice maybe, is be brave, improvise, throw things in, be like, I think as a live act I figured out it's obviously nice to have a good flow, but it's allowed to have a break, to do something weird. I really encourage you doing this because it's a lot of fun sometimes, and being very dynamic is also, for me, it's very important and fun because you can, I mean, obviously not in front of a festival audience, but when you're in a club and everything is quite intimate and the people are close to you and they follow you, then you can do what you want actually. And that's a beautiful thing. And I might be not as flexible as a DJ in terms of energy, how much energy I put into a track, but this all gives me a lot of flexibility to adapt to what the audience feels like, and I think that's very important. And also, I would not say you need this. Never. Everybody has to find his own setup basically and kind of make it his own instrument. This is my instrument, I feel like. So I can play with this for hours if I want to. When we do the Circle of Life sessions, we play 6 or 8 hours live improvisation. It's amazing, it's so much fun, and you can give so much, you can get so much from the other people you play with. So I also encourage you to play with other people on a stage. It's so much liberation and fun, and you don't always have to take care that the song is running. You could just add things or create some magic. When I played with Matthew Johnson alone, we had some moments, I don't know if it was, not sure if it was the tequila, but it just happened things and they're amazing. And you feel it because you should never be afraid of doing a mistake or having just a beat running, because let's be honest, a lot of the DJs that we follow and we like, they also have a lot of moments where it's just a beat running, right? Or like little things add to, and then there's this one moment coming, the big break or whatever, the epic moment. And that's in live music, or especially in live improvisation, I think that's the moment when the 2 or 3 people just click together and create something out of nowhere that is magic. And trust me, not only you on stage will feel it, also the audience feels this. So you give back this feeling, and that's just a really rewarding moment. So yeah, I encourage you to play live. It's really a lot of fun. And a last thing maybe, especially when you play house music, one thing I learned from Henrik Schwartz, who still is my mentor in many things and a good friend, because he's such a badass when it comes to playing live. The kick drum is always your friend. So whenever something goes wrong or something breaks or you don't know what to play next, just play kick drum. People will love it. It's just a kick drum. It's perfect. If you like that, that's it for now. If you like that, I'm gonna do this a bit more detailed and in like a bit more hours, and with the possibility to talk with me in a new format that is called In Bloom, which is an educational platform built by Sebastian Müllert, who is also, he initiated the Circle of Life thing. So this is attached to the Circle of Life. It's going to be him. You can book courses with him. You can book courses with just me or with other people, and just have a look at it. It's you have to go on In Bloom ade.circleof.live with a V. Or just Google it and have a look, and yeah, maybe see you soon there. Enjoy ADE.